I see kids that have difficult, I think it goes down to, kind of comes down to their ability to calm themselves too, that they have a difficult time regulating themselves to calm themselves down. So some of the things that I recommend is one, limiting devices a couple hours before they go to sleep. Is there a time frame that you usually recommend for that?
So let's talk about devices. It's a little more complicated than
Yeah,
the
of
message
course.
we always give. And I'm going to give a message that I think will be pretty surprising to people. And that's based on clinical experience and some recent data that has come out. So my advice, and you just see that written, is, turn off devices 32 minutes to an hour before lights out. And we really need to get off devices. And we've always kind of alluded to this issue that blue light, the light that emanates from devices, it suppresses your melatonin, makes it more difficult to fall asleep. That's really that's really become, the data has shown that really doesn't affect it that much. That blue light from devices, almost all the light devices have blue blocking light. Turn that on to night mode, but it doesn't seem to be that. Second is, I'm going to sort of throw these pieces together. Second is that there was an amazing study that just got published with adolescents. It was done in New Zealand, where they tracked a whole bunch of adolescents. I don't know how many were in the study, a large sample. And they told them, don't use your devices for the hour before bedtime. They put cameras in the kids' room. They put cameras around their necks so they could see what they were doing. And none of the kids followed the directions. Well, I think maybe one. And what they found was that device use before lights out did not impact sleep. Device use after lights out, for every minute that a child used a device, adolescents in this case, teens, used a device after lights out, was 1 minute lost sleep. So if you used it for 10 minutes, you lost 10 minutes sleep. If you used it for an hour, you lost an hour's sleep. And some of them were using it in the dark. Some of them turned it back on, the lights. So we're sort of starting to temper or don't use devices because people don't do it. So I hate to give advice
Yeah, I
that
agree.
is perfect in a perfect world, but if you're not going to do it, what's the point? Okay, so there's the blue light concern, the does device use before lights out really matter? Doesn't seem as much so. Engaging activities, so playing a video game was much more likely to impact sleep
Yeah,
than
that's
sort
what
of
I was kind of
passive.
talking about.
Yeah.
Like some people feel calmer by using their device. They kind of scroll through socials, they are reading things, maybe they even read a that that I can see people going, "Well, that actually calms me. I feel more anxious without that." It's a calming mechanism. Like some people feel more calm watching a little TV and it relaxes them. Maybe not a horror movie, but something to kind of, relax them a little, or there's not a lot of stimulation. I was talking about the gaming too, to bring up. Like a lot of my kids, specifically the boys, are big gamers, and they're like the big, games that are very stimulating, and how that affects their mind and associations with, their mind spinning, even ADHD. So I was wondering if you could touch on that. I'm sure you see it's kind of common sense too, right? To families, but it's hard to talk to them about it because some of the kids start to fight that process.
Right. So, and exactly, that's exactly like the perfect lead to kind of this third issue, right? So there's the blue light, there's like, is social arts devices that horrible? And third is that for some kids, device use actually helps them, that turning off all the devices and putting them in a dark, quiet, still room makes their anxiety just soar. And for those kids, we will say, you know what? It's kind of okay. It's okay to use your device. I don't want you completely panicking at bedtime. We sometimes use it with kids with autism spectrum disorder because they can't settle themselves. But, thinking about children with selective mutism, I don't want them spiraling and panicking. So we may actually keep devices in the picture, but I think what you bring up is exactly on point, is what are you going to be doing on that device? So gaming is not what we want doing. Gaming it's so engaging. It gets the brain going, it gets the heart rate going, it gets everything going, and it's really hard to stop. Because at what point do you turn off the gaming? Is I would rather come up with a plan where they're using a device for something that is relatively more calming. So maybe it's listening to a podcast. Maybe it's listening to a book on tape. It's best if you're going to be listening to an audio book or you're going to be reading, it's something you've read before. So you're not wanting to hear what's going to happen next or read what's going to happen next. So we have lots of kids who've listened to Harry Potter over and over and over again because it's calming. They like it. It's enjoyable, but they can stop it because they know what's going to happen. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes like a magazine or a short article will be good, reading those like, a nature magazine. If you're really into animals, reading a story about whatever, some polar bear is living up north, but something that is get your mind off thinking about all those things. But second is allowing you to settle down.
Yeah, no, that I love those recommendations because it's even like watching TV and just laying on the couch, watching a show that you don't need to know the plot so much for because it hopefully calms you versus something that you have to be right in there with. So I like the fact that it's like you're saying it's something they've read before, maybe something they've seen before. They don't need to know everything about that show. It's calming. So, another aspect is a lot of our kids have some separation anxiety and their parents are soothing to them. And our kids thrive on the need for inner control. Anybody with anxiety in general, the more control they have in terms of their environment, knowing what, when, and where, the less anxious they tend to feel. So, having that evening routine of and giving them like from a parenting perspective of like bedtime's 9 o'clock, for example, but the child's running around and having that routine and knowing that being an authoritative type parent that bedtime's 9 o'clock, we need to clean up, we need to get ready for bed, we need to take a shower. And and then some of these parents will lay with their children for a designated time, then get up and come back. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that dependency can be there, so it's a fine line, but it's also comforting for a lot of kids to just have their parent either read to them, lay with them, talk with them. For a lot of parents, and I can say for me, my kids are all adults now, but when they were little, I would go from room to room. I had four, and they just loved to talk to me. And it was a calming mechanism for all of them. And honestly, I enjoyed it. So a lot of parents having that ability to just kind of lay with their child, talk with their child, and that's where some of them open up and let out their kind of worries or not that you want them to get all wound up from it, but they talk to them and it calms them. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you feel about that?
Let's hold on the parent laying with the child. We'll hold on that one. Let's talk about predictability and routine. And first, from a kind of just routine aspect, but then also from an anxiety aspect. So, from a routine aspect, everyone needs a bedtime routine. It doesn't matter how old you are. Are you a 6 month old, an 8 year old, a 15-year old, a 25-year old, or a 50-year old? You need routines. We need every night to signal to our body it is time to get ready for bed. And doing so, having a bedtime routine, and you describe a perfect bedtime routine, like going to take a shower. Interestingly, we know baths and showers improve sleep. It probably affects core body temperature, it probably affects cortisol. There's a physiological reason for it. So doing that, brushing your teeth, getting in bed, and doing something enjoyable, right? So we don't want like the bedroom to be a place where you're kind of banished to, or as Shakespeare would say, banished. We want it to be a place where also really nice things happen. So maybe that's like your reading time, or maybe that's your snuggle time, or maybe that's your talking time. And I agree with you that it's one of the only times in the day where things are quiet and peaceful enough in busy families that you really can have this connection time and one-on-one connection time. So I really like that. So having a routine, kids with anxiety, that predictability. And so even if your child is 12 or even older than that, having a bedtime routine chart is great. This is what we do, right? We take our bath, we brush our teeth, we then go in and we have 20 minutes of whatever time it's going to be.